All right, I believe we are now live. It looks like we are anyway. Yep, I
Hello,
can
everybody.
see, there we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Lead Sites Live. This is something that we've done a little bit less often lately. I can't exactly remember the last time I did a webinar, but I am joined by Eugene. My name is Lucas. We both work for EasyAgentPro. You've probably spoken with us a few times if you've been in the Beatzilla group for any length of time. We have kind of a big update coming to lead sites. It's actually already here. We made an announcement about it last week. So if you're already a lead sites user, that data is in your updates tab and you can take a look at it. But we wanted to go more in depth today. Lead Sites is now compatible with Google Analytics 4, which is basically the latest and greatest version of Google's Google Analytics. Their old one that you're probably familiar with for tracking analytics to your website is called Universal Analytics. That's going to be phased out by Google actually next year, June of 2023. So we kind of
July.
wanted to get July, thank you. See, this is why I have him here. He can actually tell you all the important technical info. But yeah, no. So we wanted to get ahead of the curve. Our dev team worked really hard and actually was able to implement GA4 into lead sites now. So if you're a lead sites user, or somebody who's interested in lead sites or needs a real estate website and you want to use lead sites for that, you'll be all set up. You can hook up Google Analytics 4. You can actually use both at the same time right now. You can switch views between the two within lead sites and kind of just get used to the new tool, because it is a little different, right? The way it tracks information is a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more detailed, which unfortunately means it's also a little bit slower than Google's old tool. Like we were talking privately, sometimes data won't be available for like the very next day right away, like you expect with Universal Analytics. But overall, it's supposed to be a lot more accurate. So that's kind of why Google is rolling it out. So I'm the talky one here, but Eugene, you're the one who actually knows what we're talking about. So do you kind of want to take over and kind of just give us a crash course on Google Analytics 4 and kind of how it works?
Yeah, sure. I will actually turn on my screen share here, and everybody should be seeing a dashboard on a lead site at this point.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm just gonna real quick show everybody a couple of things. Number one, if you wanted to connect your website to Google Analytics and you're an EasyAgentPro customer, how can you do that? So you would want to click on this refresh analytics data button. I've already done that. And basically what that'll do, if you click that in the footer, it'll allow you to reconnect your Google Analytics. So when you do that, this will all seem familiar. It's going to have me log back in. This is going to be a little bit different because there's going to be now a section where it's asking you to connect both Universal Analytics or Google and Google Analytics 4. You don't have to connect both. You can connect one or the other if you want to. But for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and get them both connected. So you can see I have a number of, actually, I connected the wrong account. Give me 1 second here.
That's the benefit of having multiple Google accounts, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I have like 10.
Yeah, so you log into whichever Google account is tied to your website and all of your traffic and everything.
Right. So here is this one. This is one of my friend's websites. So we're going to connect the Universal Analytics and the Google Analytics 4 here, so we can see how that looks. It's going to be very similar. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you there, but when you were connecting Google Analytics 4, one of the things it was asking for was a web stream. And I know that's kind of complicated, but that's something that's provided to you by Google Analytics 4, right? When you hook up with them, is that accurate?
Yeah. And then we'll get to that here in just a second. But yeah, when you actually set up your Google Analytics account, it's going to ask you to, when you set up a Google Analytics 4 property, instead of a view like you would normally see in Google Universal Analytics, they have things that are called web streams. So a web stream is basically like your website. Your website would be one web stream. If your website also had an app that associated with it, you can connect a web stream for the app. So we only have the one web stream. That's why I didn't go into too much detail there. And then, yeah, you'll notice that this is very similar. The dashboard looks very similar to what it did before, except for we're going to have a little toggle here. And now I'm looking at the Universal Analytics 4 data. Again, very similar. You're going to see all of your referrals, your top pages, all of that fun stuff. And it's going to track just like it did before. As Lucas mentioned, the tracking is a little bit different though, because I think it has a lot to do with like the iOS update that happened like last year, where a lot of we're just not able to track page views and everything like we used to, just because of privacy concerns. So now Google is switching over to it's called an event tracking system. Basically, everything is an event in Universal Analytics. So we'll get to that in a second, but let's go ahead and take a look at what the two dashboards look like. So this is Universal Analytics, should be standard, looks like, you know, it always did. This is, though, going to be the GA4 Analytics dashboard. Slightly different. You're going to get most of your data here in the home section. If you want to look at like detailed data, you can, you know, click on the links here. I added a couple of explore sections because you can build your own reports in GA4. So this one is called a path exploration. So I can see that, you know, 6 people started the session, then 6 people viewed a page. I think Google counts a page view if they've been on the page for like 5 seconds or something like that. I can't remember. Then it counts like scroll data and, you know, things like that. So the difference here that a lot of people are going to be a little bit confused about is that we're not counting like the same things anymore. So like bounce rate doesn't exist anymore in GA4. That's just not a stat that's being tracked any longer. Now what they are calling it is engagement rate. So if you can see by the little pop-up that popped up here, it said it's the percent of engaged sessions divided by sessions. So an engaged session, so we'll go over here, is, let me see how it works. I always forget. Okay, yeah, so an engagement is if they've gone to the your site and then they've been on that page for 5 seconds, or they've scrolled, or they filled out a form, that will count it as being engaged. So it's a little bit confusing compared to like a bounce rate, but I think it's going to be a little bit more accurate at the end of the day.
Probably more accurate, actually, because that is one of kind of the questions with bounce rates is, what if they're, you know, on my page for a couple of seconds and they click through to the next page, or they visit like, you know, a form or something like that.
Right. So. Yeah, exactly. So the data, it does take a little bit getting used to, because it definitely is different. So for example, we're not going to have as much, basically all this stuff over here on Universal Analytics. Oh, I'm sorry, over here on Universal Analytics. So like your acquisitions and your behavior, these are all basically just reports. We're not going to be getting all of these standard reports in GA4. Of course, you can create your own reports. So like there's this explore section. They have a couple of templates that you can choose from. But we looked at the path exploration one. But if you want to get like more granular, unfortunately, we're going to have to build our own reports going forward until Google starts adding things to the template gallery, because actually a lot of this stuff didn't exist. I've been messing around with this just today. Just from last week, they've added a couple of new templates. So, you know, that's good. But
yeah, so this is really like hot on the heels of Google working on this. Yeah,
totally. The other difference that you're going to notice here is, so when we go to, I'm going to go to the engagement overview section here. So we were just looking here. This is going to be this engagement overview. This is almost reminds me of the Universal Analytics old home tab. So if you were used to the home tab, getting all your data there, I might consider going over to engagement overview, because you're going to get all that same data, right? You're going to see your real-time data. You can kind of see your engagement time. You can see your users, your event count. I remember I told you everything in Google Analytics 4 is an event now. So let's take a look at that. Let's view the events. So this is, Lucas mentioned that we're now compatible with Google Analytics 4. Technically, we were before, if you just added your own code in there and you were familiar with Google Tag Manager enough to add your own events. But now what we've done is we basically have created our own events built right into the platform, so that you don't have to go to like a third party like Google Tag Manager to create your own events. So we've added events for, and there's more, but you know, this website doesn't have a whole lot of events. There's events for like page view, user engagement, session start, first visit, scroll, click. If there was videos, there would be events for like video start, video view, things like that.
And that's one of the things that I find kind of interesting about this tool. I mean, it is, there are some definite like hurdles to get over switching from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4. Google Analytics 4 feels more specialized in my opinion, whereas I think with Universal Analytics, you can kind of jump into it. And even if you don't know what everything does, you can kind of get a broad overview of kind of how your site is performing. But I mean, the ability to measure things like, scrolls and first visits and
Right.
clicks. I mean, it feels a lot more, at least with lead sites, it feels a lot more accessible than the kind of stuff that even I'm tracking on like EasyAgentPro.com when I go into Google Analytics. So yeah, there's some powerful stuff that you can do with this if you're willing to, put in the work to get it all set up. Or again, if you have a website that kind of does that work for you and kind of gets you started.
Exactly. Yeah. And then on top of that, just learning where the new sections are, right? There's always going to be change is hard for anybody, even for me. At first, I kind of hated Google Analytics 4, I'll be honest, but I've learned to appreciate it. There's a lot of things to love here. One of the last things I want to show is going to be pages and screens, because this is again going to be a little bit different from what you're seeing in Universal Analytics. So you can kind of see like all the pages that people are viewing, users, new users, views per user. But this is the difference, right? The average engagement time, because now engagement is going to be a new metric that Google is tracking basically.
And a very valuable metric, because engagement is really how like the bot portion of the internet determines whether your content is valuable and worth promoting to like the top of the page, top of search results. So yeah, engagement is going to be something you're going to want to be tracking in the future.
Yeah, totally. And it's you can still do, like I said, if you want to recreate everything that was in Google Analytics, the Universal Analytics, like this content drill down, for example, I mean, you totally can. It's just you'd have to basically go in and create your own explore section report. And then you can basically create what they're calling an exploration. So we may, in the future, I don't know, maybe we'll do another webinar once we get our feet wet a little bit more and we kind of share our own explorations that we've created. But yeah, that's kind of the long or the short of it. If you're an advanced user, one last thing I'll show you. Goals don't really exist any longer in Google Analytics 4. You can, so you'll notice in the admin section, there's not even like this third column here. So you can create goals based off of events, however, but that will be something we'll have to cover another time. But it's possible, just not out of the box, kind of like it was in Universal Analytics. But yeah, good. It's a good tool. We are now compatible with it with lead sites. As you can see, you can toggle between your two views here. So if you're interested in adding your own website to Google Analytics 4, if you're a lead sites customer, I'll show you that one more time. So you'll see that I'm already connected here. If I wanted to disconnect, I would just click this refresh analytics data button. And then that's going to log me in again here. Remember which Google account to use this time. And then it's going to redirect me back to log in. And then so once I get to my analytics tab, we're going to connect whichever account we want. And then as Lucas mentioned, there's going to be a section called data streams or web stream rather. And this is where you would connect that. Real quick, let me show you what that looks like in GA4. So that's going to be here called data streams. And this data stream is called basically just the website URL. If you wanted to add another stream, you can do that. You can connect an iOS app, an Android app, or web. Web is probably mostly what our users are going to be using, but again, you can connect whatever you want. And then that's that.
Yeah. So like Eugene said, really, again, this is just the future of Google. So you have over a year to get this started. If you're watching this and you're freaking out and you're saying, oh my God, I have to learn a whole new Google Analytics, you don't right away. You can do this in pieces. And I would really recommend kind of going into it, baby steps first, maybe getting your Google Analytics 4 set up and connecting it to your website. But you have over a year to do this. It'll be July of 2023. So I would say don't wait, don't put it off and start working on it in June of 2023. But
Right.
maybe do a little work in June or July of 2022 and kind of figure out how this thing works. So when it does become mandatory, you understand it and you kind of have all your processes set up. Like Eugene said, one of the first things they say when you look at the reasons for moving over to the system is privacy focused and durable for the future, which we can translate as, yeah, there's a lot of new privacy things out there. Really, we have entered kind of a consumer
Hmm.
favoring market, which is good for all of us, right? We're all consumers. Internet privacy is kind of at an all-time low, so a lot of companies like Facebook have been working really hard to kind of counteract that. Now when you do Facebook ads, you can barely even tell when people have actually converted and purchased from your Facebook ad because iOS is protected. I think Android has rolled out some protections now. It's just getting harder and harder to actually see who's like interested in certain things and purchasing based off that stuff. So
Yeah, exactly.
Google Analytics 4 kind of exists in that new version of the world that we're creating that's more consumer privacy focused. And I think that's what they mean by durable is that, hey, by doing this, you're going to have access to less info than you had before, but that info just isn't out there anymore. And, this system will be able to persist into the future. So we're all kind of adjusting to the changes. But, again, like I said, we're all consumers. So we all benefit a little bit from the added privacy.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of a crash course on Google Analytics 4. Like Eugene said, we will be playing with this as well because not only do we use Google Analytics when we work with our clients here at Lead Sites, and we also use it personally on our EasyAgentPro website. We check that out all the time over at EasyAgentPro.com.
Hmm.
So yeah, we'll be dabbling in it as well. Maybe in a few months or a half a year or whenever, when we have a bunch of our own events set up and we've kind of gotten a taste for it, we can come back with a more advanced one of these and just kind of give you a best practices, right? Kind of a
Yeah,
here's what we
totally.
recommend for real estate agents who want to get kind of off the ground and running with this thing and do a tutorial. But yeah, that's probably a conversation for another day.
Yeah. And like you said, Lucas, I would definitely recommend getting on this train sooner rather than
Yeah.
later, especially if you're a Lead Sites customer, because you can connect both at the same time. And it's not really going to hurt
Hmm.
anything to have both connected at the same
Yeah.
time, So you can kind of compare and contrast what the data looks like in both platforms.
Yep. One thing you should know about Google Analytics too, I know we're kind of now we're just throwing things at you at the end of this, but analytics is not as 100% accurate the reporting as you would think it is. A lot of times you look at analytics and it's all how you're choosing to collect the data. So one of the things you will see, I think we even saw it on Eugene's friend's website there, is when we looked at Universal Analytics, she had something like 3 conversions and like 2 visits or something that day.
Right.
When you switched over to Google Analytics 4, it was like 4 visits and 4 convert, something like that. So yeah,
Right.
the data is going to look a little bit differently. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. That doesn't mean that there's an issue with your website or an issue with your analytics. It's just how these two systems work, how they pull in data and how they report that data back to you. It's all going to be a little different. The
Hmm.
way it comes out is going to be a little bit different. The way it goes in is going to be a little bit different. So don't freak out if your numbers look a little different from each other. As long as they're within that, that happy medium range, everything is fine. It's just how it's being reported. But
Yeah,
yeah, play around with the tool for a while and we'll be here to help you out with it. If you have any questions, you can always ask us to help you hook up your Google Analytics too, if you're a Lead Sites user, or if you're a member of BeatZillow and you're trying to get Google Analytics online, ask other people who've been there, right? We've got a community
definitely.
of over 9,000 agents at this point who are all relatively tech savvy and all market online and are trying to beat Zillow. So I'm sure somebody out here would be happy to help you, including our very own Josh Keaton, who's kind of our analytics expert here at EasyAgentPro. So, but yeah, that'll do it for this webinar. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back again eventually with another one, but for now, we just wanted to get this data out there to you as quickly as possible so you can act on it kind of like we have. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.